This one I feel personally attacked. It's about one of my favorite running backs in football, Achane.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put this in here on another show, but I know you love Achane, so I wanted to make sure that I put it in there. Things are going to fall apart. Once the offensive line starts to fall apart and the smoke and mirrors defense starts to give up big plays, next thing you know, you're getting blown out. Next thing you know, the offense is just going to grind to a halt. That's my prediction for Miami, and that's really bad for Achane. Things lined up perfectly for him to be such a target monster last year, and that's just not going to be the case this year.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Redraft ends, but Dynasty is life. I'm Theo Gremminger, and today I'm joined by Matt Kelley, the podfather from Player Profiler and Fast Draft. Matt and I have podcasted together hundreds of times at this point. First time Matt's come over to Dynasty Life since Dynasty Life moved over to FantasyPoints. And Matt, actually, I think this is the first time you've ever done Dynasty Life because we were always discussing Dynasty content on Sonic Truth. So this is your first time at Dynasty Life. Welcome. And this is going to be a very, very fun show. We've been doing many, many episodes throughout the summer, talking about values, talking about trade targets, talking about startups. Today, we're going to talk about hot takes. Matt and I are going to drop 6 hot takes each, giving you 12 spicy, amazing hot takes that are going to shape the 2025 Dynasty Fantasy Football season. So, Matt, no time for introductions. Let's just jump right into it. You've got an awesome one about Garrett Wilson.
Is it? You think it's awesome?
I think it's awesome because I have so much Garrett Wilson on my Dynasty roster still, and we are hoping for this sort of season out of Garrett Wilson. So let the people know what's going to happen.
All right, so Garrett Wilson is going to lead the league in targets, probably lead the league in receptions, maybe. Even though they're not going to throw a lot, and that's okay. When they throw, who are they going to throw to? They're going to throw to Garrett Wilson. He's at least going to lead the league in target share. Okay, that's like the minimum. Like that's like if there was a prop on that, who's going to lead the league in target share? It's like Garrett Wilson by a lot. And I think they're going to throw a little bit more than people think. I think the Jets are going to be better than people think. I think you look at the Jets schedule. I think it's really interesting. The number of games that I think they're going to be in. I think it's going to be a very competitive season for the Jets, shockingly competitive season for the Jets. I think it was a nice signing. I think Justin Fields might actually be too good of a signing for them. I think they really want to lose games and rebuild, and I think Justin Fields to Garrett Wilson is going to make that tricky. Garrett Wilson's still very young. He's still absolutely in his prime. And in Dynasty, we tend to project no more than 3 years. So he's got plenty of years left in his prime. Therefore, you just have to measure him against his peers really without factoring in age. And if you do that after a year where he dominates targets, receptions, who knows? I mean, he's also super fast and athletic. He can get downfield. So he could be top 5 in yards, top 5 in touchdowns, because the touchdowns will be so consolidated. Now, the problem with the touchdowns is Justin Fields likely pulls some of those down and runs some in. So let's say he's top 10 in touchdowns, top 5 in receiving yards, and then number 1 in catches. What does that mean? He has to be a top 5 Dynasty receiver. And right now he's outside the top 10. So to me, this is one of the must hoards in startups, in trade. If you just find whoever has Garrett Wilson in your league and approach them, see what can we do here? What can we do here? This guy's a Jet. They're going to extend him soon. There's no quarterback. There won't be a quarterback there for years to come. There's lots of narratives you can build around why people should be dumping Garrett Wilson on you. Suck him up.
I love Garrett Wilson. And if you are correct, and he does lead the league in targets, lead the league in catches, then that's been the sort of trend for the wide receiver 1 overall. Last 4 seasons, wide receiver 1 overall has hit both of those metrics. I agree with you. Target share, it's like a layup. Garrett Wilson is the main man in town. I think the number 2 target is going to probably be Breece Hall, just to show you just how weak the wide receivers are there. And Garrett Wilson, there's been nothing but positivity. Aaron Glenn, Tanner Engstrad, both like calling him out. And the New York media is now saying that Garrett Wilson's about to get a monstrous contract from the Jets, a big extension. Yes. So I agree with you. Garrett Wilson is an awesome call, Matt. I think this is a player that
Look at
could
the
really
schedule
deliver.
before the bye. Look at the schedule. Okay, so they have Pittsburgh at home. That's going to be a grinded out game. Then they have Buffalo, Tampa, Miami, Dallas, Denver, Carolina, Cincinnati. Hello.
And the last 2 seasons, he's had 95 and 101 catches, and he has never had fewer than 147 targets in any season as a pro. He's an absolute target magnet. Love the Garrett Wilson enthusiasm. I'll stay at the wide receiver position for my first call, but I'll go a little bit younger than Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson turns 25 this year. Instead, I'm going to look at 3 rookies: Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter, and Emeka Egbuka. And I think that there's enthusiasm for all 3 of these guys to some extent, Matt. When we're in Dynasty startups now, you're seeing Ted McMillan, you're seeing Travis Hunter sometime end of the round 3, sometime in round 4. You're seeing Egbuka going inside of like round 6. Egbuka's just a draft capital talent bet that Dynasty managers are not willing to let slip despite the target competition in Tampa. McMillan and Hunter, obviously top 10 draft picks at the wide receiver spot. But I'll take it a step further. All 3 of these players are going to be top 15 wide receivers, if not 2 of them becoming top 12 wide receivers in Dynasty relatively quickly. Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. are going to form one of the best wide receiver combinations in the NFL. We've seen T. Higgins and Jamar Chase coexist. This is the sort of upside outcome we're looking for with Hunter and Thomas Jr. in a Liam Cohen offense, very consolidated target tree. Hunter with his big playability really just is going to be awesome in Jacksonville. Dynasty Marketplace will catch up a little bit. Ted McMillan, target monster. You talk about Garrett Wilson. I'll talk about Ted McMillan. When we're trying to look at players who could be 150 target earners early in their career, let's circle Ted McMillan. Drake London, the 2 of us were enthusiastic about him as a prospect. You're seeing the same sort of profile with McMillan. And Matt, we talk about target competition. There's no wide receiver in Carolina that's going to sap targets away from an alpha like Ted McMillan. Really, really, really strong player. And Egbuka's the interesting one. This is going to take a little bit of work here. But when we look at contingent upside, Matt, the oldest wide receiver room in the NFL, the oldest starting wide receivers right now are Chris Godwin and Mike Evans collectively. I'll say it's a double bet here. Egbuka, we've heard Baker Mayfield talk about his versatility. So it seems like Egbuka is like a Chris Godwin type replacement if you're looking for the upside outcome. I'll take it a step further. I think that if Mike Evans misses time, just like he did last year, that's a window for Egbuka. If Chris Godwin misses time, just like he did last year, that's a window for Egbuka. And I think Egbuka is going to be a second half of the year smash play, going to continually rise up dynasty rankings. McMillan and Hunter will both challenge for wide receiver 1 numbers right out the gate. Not sure they'll both get there, but it'll be close to it. High-end wide receiver 2, maybe low-end wide receiver 1 numbers for those guys. Similar scoring output to a guy like Ladd McConkey last year, who was about 15 points per game for both of those guys. So all 3 players will be top 15 dynasty wide receivers quicker than many dynasty managers are expecting.
And I think there's going to be convergence between Hunter and Egbuka. And that's another thing to look for. Hunter is still going to be the 1B in that offense. Trevor Lawrence has never been anything more higher than like the QB 12 in fantasy football. So we're going to see what happens with this offense and how things shake out in Jacksonville. Egbuka is going to get plenty of time. He's so much better than Jalen McMillan. And you see where he's going in best ball. He's already like a top 100 pick.
Yeah.
And the target share to fantasy point projections don't make sense in Tampa. There's just way too many receivers in the 4 receivers getting drafted in reasonable spots, if not, and all overdrafted to some extent, with the exception of Egbuka, because that contingent upside is what you're looking for. And he's just a much better all around receiver in every way than McMillan. McMillan, it's so fake with him because it looks like he's the next guy after the retirement or just the next phase of wide receiver talent in Tampa post Godwin and Evans. But that's not what's going to happen. Egbuka is going to come in and they're going to draft another receiver. And then every year it's going to be like, yeah, but McMillan's next. No, he's never going to be next. He's never. That's why he should have been traded already. Most of you probably that have him have already traded him. Now is the time to trade him. Yes, there's going to be some injuries this year. Probably Evans and Godwin both missed time, but it's going to be Igbuka that is the big beneficiary.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's interesting, Matt, if we just look at the dynamics of fantasy football this season, I think people are chasing unknown upside a little bit less than we would have seen like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because no one got hurt last year, especially at the running back spot. So it's this it's this vision that all of the old guys are just gonna play well into the sunset, into the twilight. That's not always how it works. I mean, you have injuries and you have huge regression. So I'm with you, Emeka Egbuka. I think he's a great, great dynasty buy for you right now. If anybody in your league is worried about having to wait for 2026 for the scoring numbers, I think you might only have to wait 6-8 games for a window of opportunity. This one, I feel personally attacked. You put it on the show sheet. I was personally attacked.
Yeah.
But it's about one of my favorite running backs in football, Devon Achane.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put this in here on another show, but I know you love Achane, so I wanted to make sure that I put it in there. The bottom line is I've been doing a lot of schedule analysis and a lot of deep thinking about these teams and these situations. Just did a decision point show. Just search for Decision Point wherever you get podcasts, wherever you stream, and talked to Anand Nanduri, former front office executive, where we do a show together, and we just went through some of these teams and some of the win totals and the schedules, and trying to visualize what's going to happen, how things are going to play out with these teams. And then pretty quickly you start to think, oh wow, so Mike McDaniel, he's probably not going to make it to the end of the season, and Mike Tomlin's not going to make it to the end of the season, and all these, we're like, oh my god, all these coaches are going to get there's some great coaches. Brian Daboll. I mean, we're probably going to be in the best situation of all time for anyone in a front office looking for a coaching staff. You're going to have a plethora of options, the best options you'll ever have at the end of this season, given all these coaches that are teed up to get fired already. Like, it's already happening. I was in Pittsburgh. They're already printing Fire Tomlin t-shirts. Miami people are more laid back, so they don't care as much. But trust me, McDaniel's gone. Things are going to fall apart. Once the offensive line starts to fall apart and the smoke and mirrors defense starts to give up big plays, next thing you know, you're getting blown out. Next thing you know, a quarterback like Tua, who has, poor pocket awareness, he's going to not only struggle to stay upright, but struggle to get the ball out. And the offense is just going to grind to a halt. That's my prediction for Miami. And that's really bad for Devon Achane. Things lined up perfectly for him to be such a target monster last year. And that's just not going to be the case this year. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, oh, Tyreek Hill is going to be back and he'll be better because, the wrist is healthy, and bounce back season for Waddle. And, Achane will continue to get 100 targets. No, that's not what's going to happen. He's also undersized. We talked about it was a complete outlier season last year with running back injuries, and it's been proven that if you try to give a running back that's sub 200 pounds workhorse level carries, you will eventually pay the price. And I believe that there's lots of ways that Achane can disappoint. He can disappoint where the offense grinds to a halt. He himself gets injured. His role is not what it was last year. They just drafted Ollie Gordon, a player they've never had a player that can really mow between the 20s like Gordon can. So there's a lot that's changed and that will not reflect what happened last year. So I think there's this projection of, hey, this is what we have. This is Achane. This is who he is. And I don't think that's true. And I think by the end of the season, many will have come to Jesus on this offense, coach fired, quarterback gone, all this stuff. And to think that the running back's going to sidestep that chaos, that's not going to happen. And by the end of the season, Achane will be outside the top 10 in Dynasty.
We will butt heads on this one. I will just close with this one, Matt, because I made a big pro Achane stance when I came on your podcast, Mind a Mansion, a couple weeks back. I talked about how Achane could be a guy who really, really affects fantasy leagues this year in a positive way from his current ADP. I love him in like the mid-second round right now in several formats. I mean, for me, Achane, Matt, there's so many outs for him to return value. You talk about the targets last year. we didn't see that as a rookie. I think that was a shift in Miami, led all running backs in receptions, but not in targets. And then you talk about the yards per carry, was like otherworldly 7.8 as a rookie. Last year slipped to 4.5. That offense was really, really easy to defend. So things could also shift towards Achane this year. I understand your apprehension with Miami, your nervousness with Mike McDaniel, but I will continue battling for Achane. Achane stays where he's at in Dynasty. And I'll say that the fundamental truth, though, Matt, is no matter what running back you would have said is going to fall out of the top 10, there's going to be a lot of turnover this year. And we love it because you have a lot of older backs who are still maintaining value. And then you have this rookie wave of running backs coming in. And there's the obvious names and then the not so obvious names. And these players all are talented enough and in situations where they could really, really break through. JJ McCarthy might be the best value right now in Dynasty startups. It's going to be so apparent that he is a high-end Dynasty asset at the quarterback position early on in his career. JJ McCarthy will be a QB1 in Dynasty by mid-season. And I think even like by week 6. And a lot of sites like FantasyPoints, Player Profiler are updating their Dynasty rankings continually throughout the season. You're going to see a lot of sites going and quickly changing their ranking for JJ McCarthy. It's the best offensive ecosystem we've ever seen for a first-year quarterback, Matt. They have a really good offensive line. They signed 2 players from Indianapolis this offseason. Really took advantage. 2 of the better interior linemen from Indianapolis are now, Fries and Kelley, are no relation to Matt Kelley, are now on the Minnesota Vikings. They have the best blocking tight end in football in Josh Oliver to go with TJ Hawkinson, your now fully healthy Hawkinson. Then wide receiver wise, if we started ranking wide receiver duos, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison would be towards the very top of the NFL. Running back wise, they get Jordan Mason to go along with Aaron Jones, who was rejuvenated last season, his first year in Minnesota. So everything is in place around JJ McCarthy to win a lot of games. McCarthy is going to win a ton of them. The Minnesota Vikings will win the NFC North this year. A lot of turnover in Detroit with the coaching staff. Minnesota was right there with them. Week 17 was a head-to-head matchup. Winner was going to win the North. This year, Minnesota takes it a step further. JJ McCarthy was 27-1 as a starter at Michigan. Winning is contagious, and JJ keeps doing it in the NFL. This is a guy who's going to put up bigger fantasy numbers than some people think. Going to win a ton of games. He's got just mobile enough to extend plays and do a little bit with his legs. There's a ton to like about this profile. Easy QB1 by midseason. Your thoughts on McCarthy?
Easy. I think he's going to do more than just be a tactical scrambler. I think he's going to pull the ball down a decent amount whenever they need him to. I think he has that level of athleticism. He's a lot more athletic. I think he has 70th percentile speed, at least on Player Profiler. He also has size. He's big. He's a big bodied guy. People think of him because he was so young coming out, 20 years old coming out. It's what are you doing coming out? Had he come out a year later, he would have been the first pick overall easily. Then a couple of people with hot takes Cam Ward's got a stronger arm, but it would have been the consensus 101. Everyone would have been trying to trade up for him. There would have been all these fake arguments against him, but he would have been the 101 for lock it in for anyone that knows anything in the draft. And then we get this strange year where they IR'd him, even though it wasn't clear that they needed to with the torn meniscus. He could have come back, but they were like, listen, you are so young. We are seeing enough with Sam Darnold. And with Sam Darnold being good in this offense, it's not necessarily about Kevin O'Connell love to lead with the offensive coordinator. Kevin O'Connell is above average. I think at this point we can assume he's above average, but really the consistent theme of all these Vikings quarterback performances that seem to exceed expectations. Nick Mullins, they're all exceeding expectations. And the primary reason is Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is the center of gravity of that offense. He makes everybody better, especially the quarterback. He's going to make TJ Hawkinson better. He's going to make Jalen Naylor better. Ty Felton is very interesting. So what I would say is, if you could stack these guys in Dynasty, JJ McCarthy and Ty Felton, I'm super reticent to ever draft late round wide receivers in rookie drafts. Felton is the one because he's in this system, and Jordan Addison has these off the field issues. He might be suspended with the DUI. Man, you can in the NFC North, in a lot of these shootout game environments, you can absolutely see JJ McCarthy shredding. We're talking top 10 fantasy quarterback. So if he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback, he has that in his range of outcomes with the mobility and the supporting cast. He has that in his range of outcomes. Now, make him one of the youngest quarterbacks in the league with a top 10 season on his. I mean, where would he go in Superflex and 2QB leagues if you knew that? Just think it through. But the supporting cast also raises his floor too. That's why he's absolutely the best pick in Superflex and 2QB leagues.
Yeah, and we have him projected to finish as a top 11 quarterback in fantasy this year at Fantasy Points. So we're with you on that. And I think it's interesting, Matt, you bring up the rushing upside. We like the Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips offense. If they decide to do just a few design QB runs as like a wrinkle in this offense, like
which they will,
more so than which we think they will, like then we're talking about even taking that floor a little bit higher. There's just so many things to like about McCarthy. And you bring up sort of the Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs argument, like Sam Darnold resurrecting his career, getting paid in Seattle because of it. Like they've been able to elevate these guys who were sort of fringy type backups. Darnold, obviously a little more than that, but with McCarthy, it's a guy with premium draft capital in a really, really good draft class. We haven't really seen this with O'Connell, where they've had a drafted quarterback of their own choosing, tailor-made to take this system to another level. So absolutely there. Matt, you're going deep with your next prediction, or your next hot take here is about a tight end that's been sort of forgotten by the Dynasty community.
Well, he shouldn't be. He was Mr. Football. Mr. Football at Notre Dame, early second round pick. It's not his fault, right? It's not his fault that the Raiders were gifted Brock Bowers. The Raiders did not want to draft Brock Bowers. Like they wanted a quarterback and they were pissed, right? Oh, where's Bo Nix? Oh, right. Oh, we thought maybe Michael Penix would follow us. Oh no, I guess we have to take the tight end. Oh, it's a gift. They're lucky. I mean, Mike, what? How did they? So if you're Michael Mayer, yeah, you look up and you're like, with the 14th pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select Brock Bowers. You're like, what? You can imagine all of it, his whole family turning to him and being like, so sad face. Just imagine Brock Bowers as a receiver. In the context of that offense, he is their number one receiver. Just pretend that he is Nico Collins. Okay? Just do that. And then that means Jacoby Myers is their number 2 possession receiver. And then who is really the primary tight end, the guy that's got one of the best blocking tight ends. You mentioned already, blocking tight ends, Josh Oliver, help you stay on the field. Well, you're going to see that in Las Vegas, a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of red zone targets to Michael Mayer. When you actually think about the target hierarchy in Las Vegas, Mayer's way up there. And he's probably, if we're just looking at receivers and tight ends, you could argue he's like their third best receiver right now because he is seasoned. Jack Besh will be eventually. But for now, especially in the red zone, they're going to be drawing up plays for Bowers and for Mayer. And we're going to look up and be like, wow, Michael, we've seen this before. We've seen teams support 2 fantasy relevant tight ends before. And the way it happens is you upgrade your offense, your quarterback, you upgrade everything with the exception of the receiver room. And that's exactly what they did. They upgraded everything except the receiver room. Jack Besh is not a big upgrade. This year, you're going to see Michael Mayer climb into the fantasy, especially in tight end premium dynasty leagues. Michael Mayer is suddenly going to be someone that people really want. And you can, if you want, I'm sure you could just watch what happens in week 1. I mean, so in week 1, there's all these data points, fantasy data. They have lots of data. And you can be looking for data points in week 1. One key data point is going to be the routes run and just the overall offensive participation of Michael Mayer, whether he scores fantasy points in week 1 or not. Pay attention to that. He's a guy that you maybe can get as a throw-in in a lot of deals, especially tight end premium, where people just don't know what they have. Or if you're in tight end premium, he might be on the waiver. He's not going to be on the waiver wire because there's this training camp buzz. But there's situations where you're going to see 10 to 20 inferior tight ends rostered in Dynasty, and Michael Mayer may or may not even be on a team. If he is, try to engineer a trade where you get him. And the thing I would do in that situation is try to create a deal with picks involved, and make it look like you're not trying to trade for Michael Mayer, but really what you're trying to do is back into a Michael Mayer deal. Like, hey, let's exchange these 2 players and these picks. And then, oh, by the way, let's make it even. You send me Michael Mayer or something, and I'll send you one of my tight ends, and we'll call it even. And meanwhile, the whole impetus of the whole trade was you getting Michael Mayer.
A Michael Mayer poison pill. I think it's interesting with Michael Mayer is somewhere like in the multiverse, if Brock Bowers was drafted by anybody else, the whole argument for Michael Mayer might be completely different. I missed some time, but it was like mental health stuff last year as well. So Mayer, there's been positivity there. You're talking about a guy who was drafted ahead of Sam Laporta, only 23 years old when the season's going to start, hugely productive at Notre Dame. And Matt, if for whatever reason, Michael Mayer is the one you want to stash in your roster because long-term, if they move on from him, there's going to be a market for him because we see it time and time again. The highly drafted player in the NFL, another team's like, they messed up. We know what to do with him. And trade target, if he goes on the trade market this year, then you're going to see a lot of teams trying to take chances on getting Michael Mayer. I actually think this would be a guy where 2nd round pick 2 years ago, no injuries. You're talking about a guy that some teams are going to be willing to give up like a 4th round pick right away. Vegas could move on. So there's a lot of outs for him to retain some value. But I will segue. It's a great segue.
Wait, one more thing. Just
go for it.
Quickly. Yeah. He's probably going to land somewhere else in free agency. That's probably what ends up happening. And we've seen this time and time again. Remember Greg Olsen?
Yep.
Do you remember Martellus Bennett? There's a long history of
Hunter Henry, any of these highly drafted tight ends.
A lot of these tight ends, they don't really fully break out until they land to their next team. And think about how many chances a player like Hayden Hurst got just because of the draft capital. This guy, Michael Mayer, he's way better. He was again, this is a Mr. Football premium prospect at the tight end position that just for whatever reason has fallen off the radar, because his team couldn't resist taking Brock Bowers, and he himself, had some struggles early in his career that thankfully were not performance or health related.
Michael Mayer, deep sleeper. Remember, for your Dynasty rosters, keep him on the back end. And 2 years from now, you might remember this episode of Dynasty Life. I'll stay at the tight end position, and I'm going to go way, way, way more premium than Michael Mayer. I'm going to talk about Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. Matt, the record number of targets in NFL history for the tight end position is 156, set by Zach Ertz back in 2018. That was a season where Ertz had 116 receptions, 156 targets, just unbelievable production for a tight end. Last year, we saw Brock Bowers have 153 targets, and we saw Trey McBride right behind him. Both of these players were extremely highly targeted. McBride had 147. So we had 2 players in the top 15 all time in terms of tight end targets just last year. And these guys both finished with 112 catches for Bowers, 111 for McBride. This is the year that it goes up another notch, and you're going to see record-breaking performances from both Bowers and Trey McBride. It's really the year of the tight end in 2025. I'll throw George Kittle in that mix for the redraft and best ball listener. George Kittle, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, they're all going to average more than 17 points per game. Huge scoring year at the tight end position.
Yeah.
But for historical purposes, Matt, both Bowers and McBride are both going to break Zach Ertz's record in the same year. Both will go north of 165 targets. So the first time we've ever seen a tight end with 160 targets will be this season, and there will be 2 of them. You're going to see Brock Bowers with 168 targets, Trey McBride with 166. Both finished top 5 overall in targets, and both are fantastic players for you to roster in Dynasty, fantastic players for you to roster in really any format. Year of the tight end, Dynasty, redraft, best ball, get yourself some McBride, get yourself some Bowers. If you ever have the opportunity to trade for these guys, the market is so boxed out, but these are transformative players for your Dynasty roster.
Doing some quick math in my head. Okay. So give those targets to Trey McBride. Okay. Again, this is with the Kyler Murray offense. And Kyler Murray struggles throwing to the perimeter. He likes to keep it, close to the line of scrimmage. Every year that goes by, his ability to push the ball downfield has gotten worse and worse, partly because of confidence, and partly just because you see this happen. These quarterbacks, they get more and more tentative if they don't break through as professional level passers. Given this, if Trey McBride stays healthy and he is the dominant target hog on this team, Marvin Harrison Jr. has no chance to deliver in fantasy football in any format. He is going to be someone that you're going to want to sell. I mean, you can't be in on both. You can't be in on both knowing the limitations of Kyler in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's McBride's going well ahead of him in startups right now, especially in tight end premium formats. I understand the allure of Marvin Harrison Jr. We talk about consolidation of targets, but when it comes down to it, tight ends have just been better bets with Kyler Murray. He's a shorter quarterback. It's just been an easier target for him. We saw the sample size where Zach Ertz was very highly targeted as well. McBride's really taken that to another level. But for me, I would rather roster McBride than Marvin Harrison Jr. A year ago, I would have given you a different response to that. But I think we've actually seen it for a year together. And Matt, when it comes down to it, Trey McBride just got the largest contract all time at the tight end position. They paid him an absolute fortune. You're not paying a player that amount of money to be like your number 2 player on offense. That's Travis Kelce expectations in Arizona for McBride. So year of the tight end. It's going to be a really, really fun one.
Who you got? Marvin Harrison Jr. or Tet McMillan?
It's very, very close for me. It's very, very close. I actually have Tet McMillan, I think, right there with him, like on my Dynasty rankings over FantasyPoints. They're very, very close. But it comes down to it, Matt. I think that it's a targets versus touchdowns argument. It's probably easier for me to bet on the target monster in Tet McMillan. I do think that the trade equity for Harrison Jr. is more, like as an asset right now in Dynasty, going slightly ahead of him in startups. But I'll take Tet McMillan. I think Tet McMillan's going to be awesome.
Do it.
I'm not anti Marvin Harrison Jr. It's just a very pro Tet McMillan argument for me.
You're pro realist. You're pro truth.
We're trying to win here, Matt. We're trying to win.
You're pro winning.
We're trying to win. We're pro winning. So yeah, Tet McMillan, like it's just I'll ask you this. Who has the most targets over the next 2 years?
McMillan by a mile.
McMillan. So the way that Marvin Harrison Jr. gets me in this bet is he becomes this unbelievable red zone performer, takes a step forward, and is way more efficient. So there's a lot of like variables here that he could get me on this one. And I do think Marvin Harrison Jr. is very talented. I think if he was in other team situations, we'd feel a little bit better about him. It's not he's a bust argument. It's just Tet McMillan's really good. And I like betting on my Dynasty wide receiver ones to get a huge amount of targets rather than a guy who has to thread the needle with 12 touchdown catches. So Tet McMillan for me, Matt.
No team has more continuity in a bad way for Marvin Harrison Jr. than the Cardinals. Same everything from last year. So just assuming everything's going to change when everything stays the same doesn't make sense.
Talking about a very deep running back class, this is the best class that we've seen since 2017. And I think when people talk about it, you want to talk about guys like Genty. You want to hear about guys like Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson. But Matt, We're talking about day 3 picks. The depth of the running back class really, really shining. Which 2 running backs do you have a prediction for here?
One from this class, one from last class. And it's interesting. The guy I think the most about, and when we stream, the Minded Mansion show or the Sonic Truth show on the Player Profiler Network, we're typically we're pulling up player pages. We're showing athleticism, college production. I haven't been tracking this, but I just feel it when I'm doing it. I feel it. I'm like, I'm pulling up Taj Brooks again. Almost in every show, I find myself pulling up Taj Brooks because in rookie drafts, it's just such a smash in those later rounds. And in every format, we're talking about seasonal leagues. We're talking about every type of league there is, best ball, you name it. But in particular, Dynasty, Taj Brooks. I don't want running backs on offenses that are going nowhere or set to implode. Okay, so I'm not interested in Cam Scatterbo. Do you see the Giants' schedule? They have one winnable game on their schedule. Literally, the Giants are favored in one game.
A rough start, a very, very rough start to the season for Giants fans.
It's going to be a rough
front-loaded
whole
schedule
season.
Is nightmarish.
They are scheduled to win one game by 1.5 points at New Orleans. That's the one game Vegas has them favored. And so if you're betting on their running game, you're going to be sorely disappointed no matter how talented it is. So, or the players are. And Cam Scatterbo's not that explosive anyway. So I'm not sure why anyone cares about him. It's just bizarre. He cares about Cam Scatterbo. Cam Scatterbo loves Cam Scatterbo. Why other people do, I don't know. Okay. So what's the opposite of that? What's the outer bounds of on the other direction? It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, they're going to be prolific again. It's not like they invested big in their defense. No. Taj Brooks is going to get fed. Chase Brown is a nice player. But the Bengals have said, multiple coaches talking about Chase Brown and what he is, a dynamic satellite back plus player, not an every down player, right? So they have a role in mind for him, and they couldn't actually implement it because they didn't have anybody else, because Zach Moss was not healthy last year, and they had to lean on Chase Brown in ways they didn't want to, and that's why they went and got a guy with 1,500 yards on his resume twice, a guy that has caught 25 passes 3 consecutive seasons in college, a touchdown monster, just the perfect bowling ball between the 20s guy that I think is going to eventually earn the goal line carries as well, assuming that he shows good discipline and ball security in camp, preseason, and early in the season. So this is a guy whose role is only going to grow, and the pie is just so big. There's so many ways to slice it to get him fantasy points that he can be usable in year one without a Chase Brown injury. And it's just, anything can happen. You want pieces of offenses where if anything can happen, the contingent upside is huge. With Taj Brooks, he has the talent profile, the production in college, where if things break his way, he's going to be a monster. And you can say the same for Isaac Garendo. Isaac Garendo happens to be behind the most injury-prone running back in the league. And this is a team that said, you know what? We don't need Jordan Mason, right? We're going to go ahead and draft Jordan James. We're going to draft another Jordan. But Jordan James is like the quintessential average college running back. And Isaac Garendo is anything but. Isaac Garendo is big and fast, and he's just the perfect fit for a stretch zone running scheme. So the trade of Jordan Mason really showed a lot of confidence in Garendo. It made many draft experts assume, and I'm sure you did, that the 49ers would be in the market with so many picks for an early-ish round running back, maybe third round. But they waited a while before they drafted running back, and they were well into day 3 when they finally pushed the button on Jordan James, and he's not an exceptional fit for their system the way that Isaac Garendo is. So you get an injury, whether it's an oblique, a quad, a calf, whatever it is with McCaffrey, there's probably going to be something. We have an injury finder app in the App Store that shows the probabilities of players getting injured. And every year, McCaffrey's in the top 10. So to me, Garendo is a no-brainer. I know that he's probably rostered by a McCaffrey manager, but especially in dynasty leagues where if you don't have Garendo and who has him doesn't have McCaffrey, I would strongly target those teams in trade.
So I think this is exactly the kind of recommendations you should be making. And very, very sharp players for you to circle here, Matt. I just did an article at Fantasy Points. It's not paywalled. You can go read it, where I've broken down every single backfield. And I had a sort of a chart saying which way the backup would be treated if the starter went down. Both of these players were in the bell cow category, where if Chase Brown misses time, Taj Brooks is a bell cow. If Christian McCaffrey misses time, Garendo will be a super, super valuable player. I agree. I think he'll hold off Jordan James. That sheer athleticism he has is something where he's just a way more of a per touch bet than James, the kind of guy who's a really Jordan James is sort of a Jordan Mason type who can accumulate yards, whereas Isaac Garendo is that next level sort of athlete. I like both these calls, Matt. I'm higher on Chase Brown this year than I think you are. I think it's more of a contingent bet. But when you talk about the volume that Chase Brown had to withstand last year, that's not necessarily a sustainable thing for the second half of the year. I do agree that Brooks will get worked in. He'll be the clear number 2 back in that offense. I love it. And I could say that if you want to just look stylistically at Cincinnati, Brown had 229 carries last year. They might say this is a more of a 190 carry guy. Let's get the targets up. Let's mix in Brooks a little bit more. So I love these two calls. I'll stay with your high contingent upside bets at the running back position, and I'll go Taj Brooks, and I'll raise you an even cheaper running back in Dynasty, and that's Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Was some reporting this week from The Athletic. A lot of the local beat reporters in Washington have talked about how Washington has been pleasantly surprised by just how big the frame Krosky-Merritt has. He's just a little bit more jacked than they thought he was going to be. And in terms of his explosiveness, they really love it. They're chasing big play ability at the running back position this year in Washington. Brian Robinson, who I know you're bullish on this year, especially at cost, there was also some positivity there. But listening to the beat reporters in Washington, it sounds like the best bet to earn carries behind Robinson will be Krosky-Merritt. There's guys like McNichols, guys like Rodriguez that are on the roster that have some level of enthusiasm for deep dynasty leagues, but it's Krosky-Merritt. Krosky-Merritt was super interesting, Matt. This is a player who was incredibly productive at New Mexico, transfers to Arizona, was going to get his chance to play in the Big 12, gets injured, then comes back for the Shrine Bowl. Our friend Cody Carpentier tells me when he's down in the Shrine Bowl in Texas, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is the most impressive running back here. Krosky-Merritt goes on and wins the MVP award for the game. Then there was some steam with him in drafts, ends up falling to Washington in a really strong range. Washington was connected to guys like Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson in the pre-draft process. They didn't take any of those guys. They went offensive line, made pragmatic selections, and then took Krosky-Merritt. So Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I'll go with your same argument. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is going to be a big waiver wire pickup in redraft leagues, and he's going to have multiple usable weeks this year in Dynasty. If Brian Robinson misses time, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is going to be right in your lineup. Washington was one of the more productive rushing teams in the NFL last year. I'm going to say Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has 6 weeks of RB2 or better production this season. That's a hot take, Matt.
Yeah, I think by the end of the season, you're going to see Taj Brooks will be a top 20 fantasy running back in Dynasty. Garendo will be top 30. Krosky-Merritt will be top 40.
I love it. I love it. And you referenced this a little earlier with your Marvin Harrison Jr. sort of fade in regards to Trey McBride, but you've got an even cooler one with a wide receiver that the two of us have been very high on for years. Now it's sort of a perfect storm season for him.
Yes.
He's the number 2 target in a much better offensive system, way less pressure on him, and I think he could thrive.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember how stupid everyone felt last year not drafting Barkley and Henry? Everybody, me included, everybody just slapping our foreheads. How did we not see it? Obviously, this guy was doomed in his previous location, was on one of the worst teams in the league, didn't have an offensive line, goes to a place that is the perfect skill match, culture fit, everything, with a high-powered offense and a great quarterback that freezes opposing linebackers and improves their efficiency. So Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley were smashes from the beginning. The fact that there were leagues where you could get Barkley in the second round in drafts and Henry in the third round in seasonal league drafts was embarrassing. Where these guys were available in Dynasty was embarrassing. They're a year older and they're now more valuable in Dynasty. That doesn't it's rare for a running back for that to happen. It happened with both of those guys. So who is that guy this year? There's that guy every year, right? That where it's just like the most obvious upgrade happens and nobody cares. Right? Situational upgrade. And that's George Pickens. Like, this is what we've always wanted. This was a mega talent 20-year-old coming out of Georgia. Many in a super talented class. Many thought he was the most talented. It's just that the knock on him was the criticism. Oh, this guy's too intense. He makes people uncomfortable in the locker room. He makes opposing quarterbacks uncomfortable. And if we're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers, the great Aaron Rodgers, the Super Bowl winning Aaron Rodgers, the future of the Steelers franchise, we've got to clear the decks for him and make sure he's happy. We need to build a nice little nest for Rodgers. And that means we have to dump first round pick and mega talent George Pickens. And where are we going to send him? To a team that's going to be required to throw the ball at a prolific pace. They're already fast paced, pass first offense. Now, what if their running game is as decimated as any in the league, with the run blocking is some of the worst, and the actual running backs they have on the roster are just retreads and rookies in Dallas. So everything is trending toward George Pickens finally delivering. He has a quarterback that can deliver the ball to the outside and the perimeter accurately, and opposing corners, like when they face Chicago and other like alpha corners, are still going to be, trying to find where CeeDee Lamb is on the field. Other defensive coordinators will be scheming to stop CeeDee Lamb. And this will be a whole new world for George Pickens. He's like, let me get this straight. I don't have defenses scheming against me. I have a much better quarterback. And every time I look around, I'm in the red zone again. Think about that. So if you're in Dynasty, you're not trying to get George Pickens, then you're doing it wrong. And George Pickens, when you look at just comparing situations, what's changed with George Pickens? Everything. What's changed with Marvin Harrison? Nothing. But yet, as prospects, these guys very similar games, very similar pro games. So if you look at how these guys have been used as pros, Marvin Harrison Jr. and George Pickens are two of the most sort of isolate and throw a 50-50 ball style receivers in the league. There's very few receivers in the league that are used more on the boundary and are trusted more by their quarterbacks to come down in contested situations than Harrison last year and Pickens throughout his career. It's just that one has an incredible situation and one has a very challenging situation in Marvin Harrison. They're a similar age. They both have at least 3 years of their prime ahead of them. So it doesn't make sense to me that by the end of the season, I can't see a world where Marvin Harrison Jr. is ahead of Pickens. So I think, now that we've done this thought experiment, George Pickens, my hot take is that he will pass Marvin Harrison Jr. in Dynasty just because he's a better version of Marvin Harrison Jr. and they're both young.
George Pickens, this is one where it's like a low-hanging fruit, Matt, where he is going to be a free agent. So two things will happen. Either this is a wonderful situation in Dallas, and Dallas is going to find the money to give Pickens a big contract, and he will play alongside CeeDee Lamb in this sort of T. Higgins role opposite of a Jamar Chase. That would be a great outcome. Then there's also the outcome where he does really well this year, and he moves on to another team who views him as a wide receiver one. So you have so many outcomes here for George Pickens to gain a ton of dynasty value.
And the narrative about him changes too. The narrative about him in the locker room changes. It's one of the easiest, quickest things that could possibly happen. That a guy who's known as a locker room problem and no one really knows why, he just has a weird stare. that becomes a positive thing very quickly if the guy's actually producing.
Yeah, and it's two-pronged here. Like, you have a huge media base in Dallas who wants this to work out, and it's a big opportunity for Pickens. There's been nothing but positivity for Pickens since he was traded to Dallas. There's a lot of hype from the media about how Pickens looks, and also just there hasn't been any off-the-field drama, any locker room drama. So I think this is a great chance for Pickens to sort of get his career back on track. I think he's very, very talented, and we've really been waiting for it, Matt. We've seen the guy have an 1,100 receiving yard season. Last year, he had 900 receiving yards in 14 games played. We haven't seen that big touchdown season. The most receiving touchdowns he's had in any season as a pro is 5. You can easily see him having a 10 touchdown season this year in Dallas with all these advantageous coverages. And Dallas on paper looks like a team that's going to be very, very pass happy without a big bell cow running back that's going to sap away a number of touches like we've seen in years past. So I think Lamb, Pickens, when we start ranking this midseason, who's the best wide receiver duo, these guys are going to be up there. I really am betting on Pickens this year, just like yourself. Really, really good one there. And
they're gonna
listen,
man. Listen, they're gonna have a great rapport too. I think that he respects Dak Prescott. He respects CeeDee Lamb. He didn't respect anybody in Pittsburgh, and I think it caused a problem. That he didn't respect the quarterback, he didn't respect his teammates, and eventually that's what led to him exiting. But what you see what happens when Randy Moss ends up in New England and he respects Wes Welker and he respects Tom Brady, everything changes.
Really rooting for Pickens. I still have my Pickens bags packed on my Dynasty rosters. Let's see it happen this year. I'm going to go with a player that Dynasty managers are high on, but not high on enough, and that's Bo Nix. We've been searching, Matt, for the QB6. You have the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, then you've got Jalen Hurts, and you've got Joe Burrow. And it's sort of, if I ask you and I ask 5 other people who are Dynasty content creators, who's the QB6, you're going to get a number of answers here. And I think this offseason, you've seen people trying to push up the Drake Mays, the Caleb Williams. There's more enthusiasm for Justin Herbert than there was last offseason. There's just a big grouping. Certainly CJ Stroud is still hanging out as a low-end QB1. But for me, by season end, it's going to become very apparent that Bo Nix is the QB6 in Dynasty. He's going to very much separate himself from the pack. This is a player who last year, with really subpar weapons in a subpar offensive situation, finished as a easy QB1, was a guy who had 29 touchdown passes, rushed for over 400 yards, led Denver to the playoffs. If Jaden Daniels wasn't in the NFL last year, Bo Nix would have been a much, much bigger storyline. But it's going to become so apparent that Bo Nix is the QB2 in the among all year 2 quarterbacks. And it's going to become very apparent that Bo Nix is one of the better values right now in Dynasty startup drafts. I drafted him as the QB 11 overall in a recent FFPC Dynasty startup. Like, I think that price tag will not be available a year from now at all. Last year, we talked about his production, passed for over 3,700 yards. This year, I think he takes it up to 4,300 passing yards. The rushing production actually improves. He rushes for over 500 rushing yards this year, and I'm going to say 35 passing touchdowns. This is going to be a very efficient offense, Matt. We talk about like the RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins debate. You can find that on other shows. Let's just say that we go from having Javonte Williams as a starting running back to having 2 really talented running backs in Denver. Then you add Evan Ingram at tight end. The tight end position was pretty much non-existent last year. There really wasn't a joker. You talk about Marvin Mims coming on towards the end of the last season, had 3 wide receiver 1 weeks in the last 5 weeks of the year. Then you talk about Pat Bryant, a very athletic, big wide receiver drafted inside of round 3. Cortland Sutton had one of his best seasons as a pro, playing alongside Bo Nix. Bo Nix is in a much better situation this year than he was last year, and he's a winner. QB6 in Dynasty, Bo Nix.
You can't list Pat Bryant as one of his great weapons. Come on, get out of here.
Pat Bryant is a improved weapon in the passing game.
We'll see what happens.
Not a Pat Bryant
Evan Ingram and RJ Harvey for sure. RJ Harvey in particular. RJ Harvey is now a value because of J.K. Dobbins. I can't believe we're here. But this that we talked about like just the obvious guy that has the incredible situational upgrade in George Pickens. There's also a phenomenon that happens in fantasy where a guy will get suppressed because Team X signs a dusty player or a veteran that has like some residual juice, and then all of a sudden, well, maybe I can wait around on this guy. You see that happening now with RJ Harvey, where in our Flex 4 game on Fast Draft, again, you draft 6 guys for the full season, best ball style, top 4 enter your lineup every week. RJ Harvey was routinely being drafted in round 6 as an incredible upside play. I agree. So was Cortland Sutton, by the way, Broncos. Then all of a sudden I look up after this J.K. Dobbins acquisition, and suddenly Harvey's not being drafted. Right? People will draft Godwin. They'll draft James Conner. They're not drafting RJ Harvey. Well, hey, this is J.K. Dobbins. If the reason you can't let a guy like J.K. Dobbins get you off a player. That's a cardinal sin in fantasy football, is to let dusty player X get you. Like if you were to let Austin Eckler get you off Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, like that's what we're talking. No, you're not allowed. Don't do that. Just don't do that. Don't let J.K. Dobbins talk you out of RJ Harvey.
Well, let's take
the hell out of him on Fast Draft. And Bo Nix, by the way, I will say shame on you. You couldn't say top 5. If you like him so much, you can't say top 5. You had to QB 6.
I took the easy way out.
I mean,
and
that is so cowardly. That is this is supposed to be a hot take show.
It's hot. It's hot. He's not the key. He's going to move up significantly, and I'm saying he's going to be worth more than Caleb Williams and Drake May in Dynasty, which we're not seeing that in startup drafts right now. So it's hot enough. It's hot enough, and I'll just give you just a
change the name of it. Yeah,
it's hot enough.
We're on a hot enough show. This is a hot enough take show.
Let's go. I agree with you. RJ Harvey's the one you want in Denver, but just to put into perspective, J.K. Dobbins 2025 or Javonte Williams 2024?
Well, Dobbins, of course, yes,
100%.
Just to put you, this is what I'm also drafting the hell out of Jaden Blue.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know about
Javonte Williams. I don't know about J.K. Dobbins. The one argument for these two running backs is that they're another year removed from these major injuries and reconstructions. So there is some merit to maybe acquiring them if you can get them but not, especially in Dynasty, discounting Blue or Harvey at all because of them.
No, I agree with you. For me, it's Dobbins is just the whole offensive situation around Knicks is just so much better than it was last year. Improved multiple positions. And Matt, a lot of those wide receivers we mentioned, like the Mims, the Vele's, the Franklins, all of these guys were super young last year. They're all a year older. That helps a lot, especially when you have continuity. And one stat I love throwing out with Bo Nix, it's the first time since he was playing in high school that he has the same offensive coordinator in consecutive seasons. Transferred in college. There's a lot of turnover at the highest level with the offensive coordinators. So Bo Nix has been a guy that's just been constantly having to change verbiage, constantly having to change systems. This year, it's going to be exactly the same. We've heard Sean Payton talk about just how more comfortable Bo Nix looks at this point. And Matt, when we talk about how successful Nix was last year, he did get off to a slow start. Like if you look at his first month of the year production, there was a little bit of rushing production there, but we saw the passing production really take a step forward in that second month of the year. So I think he's coming right out of the gate swinging. And I think you have the best, I'd say, well, not necessarily the best. It's the hottest take of the entire show right here. Drop it for everybody.
By the end of this season, this NFL season, Tua Tagovailoa will have retired. Kirk Cousins will be taking over as the starting quarterback in Miami, and that will propel Jalen Waddle to be a top 20 dynasty wide receiver.
I love it. I'm with you on the Waddle one. I think like with the Tua Tagovailoa, Matt Kelley's out here predicting concussions. I mean, we're going to say another concussion.
No. I'm not saying concussions. I'm just saying he's going to retire. He's going to retire for some reason. I don't know if it's a concussion. I don't know what it is. But he's, at the very least, not going to be the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins in the second half for whatever reason. It's going to be Kirk Cousins. Well, Maybe. Who knows exactly what happens with Tua Tagovailoa. But what I do know is that this is Miami's fault. And we talk about Mike McDaniel. He is going to get another job somewhere, probably as an offensive coordinator, but it's not him, right? And it's rarely the offensive coordinator or coach's fault. It's typically the front office. If your quarterback is Tua, then you need to invest heavily in the offensive line. That needs to be your focus. You can't be focused on acquiring deep threat receivers that require your quarterback to stand in the pocket longer. It doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. They have the exact wrong personnel around Tua for him to be successful. And it starts with the general manager not creating the right environment for him to succeed and thrive. He has very poor pocket awareness and an injury track record that's scary. And it is negligence on the part of Miami's front office to let this happen.
Zach Wilson, the current backup quarterback in Miami,
See?
doesn't do anything for you.
What? No, I'm just saying, yes, Zach Wilson should be rostered. And if he's available in 2QB and Superflex leagues in Dynasty, you should get him. Yes, pick him up just in case. You never know, right? 2 dynamic receivers there. But if I had to bet on where Kirk Cousins will land, and Kirk Cousins, and we talked about this earlier, another year removed from injury, unfairly criticized last year. I think that he's actually going to be a positive wherever he lands. He's going to give a production jolt to that team and those weapons. And I think in particular, I like. There's lots of ways that it can happen, but I like a Jalen Waddle bounce back season.
I'm with you on the Waddle bounce back season. I think it's a really easy bet to make. And I'll say with your Cousins take, it's an interesting one, Matt, because got that massive amount of money last year. And when you think about Cousins, it's the kind of guy that you could easily see playing until age 40. Like you can just see it. He comes back this year, gets a new lease on life, signs with somebody else. Talking about like the Andy Dalton trajectory where a guy just plays and never really retires and just sort of hangs around. Cousins is only 36, a little less than 37 years old right now. So he'll turn 37 during the year. Maybe this year he lands with somebody else. And I think that this is exactly the sort of scenario that Atlanta is looking for. Not even if it's not Tua. Starter goes down. These teams start scrambling. A lot of teams have really poor backup situations. If you start looking at the backup quarterback list right now in the NFL, there's maybe like 8, 9 guys where you say that's a really smart backup for you to have. And then a bunch of like big question marks. Cousins would become extremely appealing to a dozen teams if they lost their starting quarterback right now. So love the Waddle call, and I love the sneaky Kirk Cousins call as well. I'll end it with this one. Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a ridiculous value right now. I've talked about him on Fantasy Football Daily from a redraft perspective. I talked about him on School of Scott when we had Jacob Gibbs on about how I thought Jaxon Smith-Njigba as like wide receiver 18 is a gift when it comes to redraft leagues. Him being in the 3rd round after last season's breakthrough and now in a situation where the target share is going to go up exponentially. Like JSN was a 23% target share player last year, had 100 receptions. And now there's this fear and trepidation out there that because it's Sam Darnold and because he's going to lose some slot snaps, this is going to somehow lessen his fantasy impact. I'm going to say on the contrary, and JSN actually has a higher scoring season than he did last year. And I think you're going to see it reflected in him being able to win not only out of the slot, but in higher ADOT looks on the outside. They're going to move JSN all over the place. Clint Kubiak offense, they're going to use a fullback a lot. It's going to create more targets, more touches for the skill position players with JSN highly utilized. The catches will stay right around 100. So I'll capitulate, Matt. I'll say JSN loses a few catches, has 95 catches, not 100. But we're going to see the yards and we're going to see the touchdowns go way up. He's going to have 9 touchdown catches, and the receiving yardage will be right around 1,400 receiving yards. JSN is going to be a wide receiver 1. He is a great value for you in redraft, a great value for you in best ball. And in Dynasty, JSN is much cheaper now than he will be a year from now. Really, really strong target in Dynasty startups, strong target in trades. Matt, he's a great pivot down player. If you've got one of these higher end assets and you're looking to spread the wealth in a tier down trade, tearing down to JSN and a couple of rookie picks, that could be looked at as a massive win in a few months if he has this sort of advancement in his trajectory this season. Last year, his first full season healthy in the offseason. This year, you're going to see a little bit more of that alpha focal point. Love JSN this year. Love him in Dynasty.
Trade Puka for JSN and picks.
There you go. Matt, let everybody know once again where they can find your work.
Hey, at fantasy_mansion on Twitter. That's a lot of stuff that I put out there. And you got to go to fastdraft.app. Fastdraft.app, get the app and start drafting faster in the hottest best ball game around.
Check out my recent episode of Fantasy Football Daily with Davis Maddock. Jared Smola joined Scott and I on School of Scott this week. Next week, we've got a bunch of shows planned. We're everywhere here at Fantasy Points, and Dynasty Life is going to help you crush your Dynasty leagues this season.